Martin, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Looking forward to it. Thanks for the invitation.
So, for those who don't know him, Martin Paver is a pioneering force at the intersection of project management and artificial intelligence. With a background in leading billion-dollar infrastructure projects, Martin has more recently been thinking hard about the future of project management. He's the founder of Projecting Success, where he champions a data-driven approach to transforming project delivery. He's established the Project Data Analytics Task Force, created the first Project Data Trusts, and founded Project Hack and the Project Data Analytics Meetup. Through his open source publications and his training programs, he empowers professionals with advanced data analytics and AI skills to revolutionize how projects are managed and delivered. And that is why I wanted to speak with you today, Martin, about the future of project management. So welcome.
Okay, well, thanks, Mike. Exciting times, eh?
It is. And I really am enthusiastic to hear your vision of the future of project management. But we probably need to wind back a little bit to set some context for that. Your kind of reimagining of project management, as I understand it, is rooted firmly in data and data analytics. So could you start by giving us some examples of the potential that data analytics has to transform the way we deliver projects?
So that's quite a difficult question to answer because it's so big, right? The potential is so vast. So I would say, first of all, so we think about data analytics, I would say broaden it out to data analytics and artificial intelligence, right? People talk about artificial intelligence a lot, but they miss out the fundamentals with data analytics, right? You can do a lot just through Python scripts and things like that. You don't necessarily need artificial intelligence to do some of this stuff. So let's just call it a big spectrum.
Yeah.
So advanced data analytics and artificial intelligence, what we can start to do, so if you think about lessons learned, for instance, so lessons learned, we take loads and loads of knowledge, we summarize it and stick it in a spreadsheet and say those are the lessons learned. All right. If we flip that around and we start to say, let's embed that knowledge because it's linked to the performance of a schedule, it's linked to the performance of a cost plan, it's linked to the benefits that we realize, whatever. So when we start to join that data together, we understand what the impact is of a certain action. So if we do that action well, it probably saves us some time. If we do that action badly, it probably costs us a lot of time. That's not a lesson learned necessarily. That's just the ebb and flow of projects. If it goes really, really badly, then there might be an inquiry into it, right? So it might be a bit of value engineering. It could be that you've got a lucky break with the interest rates or something like that.
Yeah.
So Trump's come in and he's changed tariffs, right? So you can put that into this connected data set and say, that's the reason for that delay is because Trump changed tariffs, right? Now, if that's the case, you don't necessarily want to put that into your sort of lessons learned register because it's probably a one-off. So in terms of those lessons learned, it's all about context. And that context is already embedded in your data ecosystem.
Yeah.
So another example would be things like risk registers, for instance, right? So if you ingest all of your risks and you see which of your risks have materialized into an issue, so if it costs you a lot of money with that issue, it then goes into a lessons learned register. They tend to sit in three different places, right? So the risk register sits with the risk managers. Normally they go and manage that for you. The issues register might sit with the project manager, and then the lessons learned database sits with your knowledge manager. It's a continuum. It's a spectrum. But we don't manage it as a continuum. We managed it through these siloed responsibilities. If instead we could say, let's put all that data through a large language model like ChatGPT and train it up. So what we get with that training then is we can say to it, what can we expect to go wrong based around this sort of work breakdown structure and this product breakdown structure? So it'll say, please be alert to these things at these times. So we can then start to drive it that way. What we can also do is things like agents.
Yeah.
So there's various sorts of agent, right? There's a chatbot. So the body of knowledge or your processes at work. So we did this with Rolls-Royce a couple of years ago. So I took all their project controls processes, and their graduates tend to phone up the help desk, right, who's got a senior guy in it, and said, I'm stuck with this part of the process. What do I do? Yeah. So we just ingested all those documents into ChatGPT. It took like 10 minutes. So you can then have a conversation with ChatGPT. And if you change the temperature setting on ChatGPT, you can increase the accuracy rating. So if you get stuck with the process, you just talk to ChatGPT, and it's the first sort of line of a service basically. It's a bit like a call center. So you say, I'm stuck on this thing, and it'll help you through it.
Yeah.
So if you think one step further than that, instead of just being a chatbot to help you through that, what it might do, so this is something else that Rolls-Royce have done, is saying, let me trigger the change control process. So previously what people used to do, they used to fill in a form for change control. So they'd say, this is the scope of the change control, this is the value, these are the people it needs to go through to get signed off, etc.
Yeah.
They've now flipped that into a workflow. So that workflow joins up to the rest of your data, so it's a connected data set. So when it's looking at the work package that's going to get affected, it's pulling that from your centralized data system.
Yeah.
It's not you going in and Googling it and trying to find it on your system and then fill the form in through typing it into a form. It's now pulling from all those data sets. Yes. So that means your accuracy shoots up.
Yeah.
So with that change control form, you know exactly where it is in the process at any one time. There's loads of comments in there. You can track it all through. Plus as well, you can run a dashboard now so you know where each of your change control forms are. And then you can look at dependencies between some of those change control forms. Plus as well, if somebody is taking a long time to do their part of the workflow, you can surface that data.
Yeah.
So that means that person is probably not a team player. They're letting down the entire process. So you can go have a chat with them then and see what the work pressures are and why they're not holding up their side of the bargain.
Yeah.
So those are just some small examples about the scale of this. And there's lots of vendor products out there like Nplan and things like that. But it's vast, absolutely vast.
Absolutely. And I think people who are thinking that, you know, they've mastered ChatGPT now, they can ask it questions, are missing out on so much. And for me, the real pivot point for me was learning a bit about how agents work. And I think the next thing is to start playing with them, because the ability to build a whole sequence of activities into a process that the agent can follow and can go and source the information and bring it in and submit it for review, I think is just brilliant. But we've used terms like data and data analytics in order to make the case for why people should be paying attention to what you've got to say and to this massive change. But I think we do need to go back, and I'd like to tap into your experience to give us a really pragmatic project management orientation interpretation of these terms. So how should project managers understand the terms data and data analytics?
So for me, when I speak to people, so people say rubbish in, rubbish out, right? Yeah. So you've got to watch your data because you put rubbish data into these tools and it's going to give you a rubbish estimate.
Yeah.
Now for me, data's a lot bigger than that. It's basically anything we're going to use to put into these systems so we get insights out of it.
Yeah.
Right? It's its simplest term. That could be the instructions for a GPT model. It could be the training data that goes into that model. So when I say training data, it could be a book, right? Yeah. Anything that we're pulling together, which we're helping to advance the system.
Yeah.
So when people think about data and they just think schedules and cost plans.
Yeah. Or big tables of numbers.
They're missing out on a lot of the richness and the context.
Yeah.
So you've got to see it in the round, really. So you've got to think like a machine. Don't think like a human being, think like a machine. So if you think like a machine, what do I need to be able to do to answer this problem?
Yeah.
And once you do that through a lens of machine learning, it starts to transform the way you think about your data, especially project delivery data, because we're not collecting the right data today to answer the problems that we want to address in 5 years' time. So if people start to solve that problem now, it means they're set up for 5 years' time because they've got 5 years' worth of data. If somebody starts to solve that problem in 5 years' time and say they need a load of data, it's going to take them 5 years to catch up.
Yeah.
In which case, they're probably too late and they've missed the market and they'll probably go belly up.
So what kind of data should they be focusing on?
So So for me, it's making sure it's not just about the data, it's integration of the data.
Right.
So your schedule, for instance, your schedule links to your cost plan. So if your schedule was late, what's the impact of that on cost?
Yeah.
In terms of schedule being late, was that down to a resourcing problem? Was it down to a technical issue? Was it down to change control? The client changed their mind, etc. That's all connected data. So we can connect that data together through a data schema, or you can go one step further and start to embed all of that into something called a semantic knowledge graph.
Right.
And once we get into knowledge graphs, you can do some incredible things, right? And that's where it starts to get really beautiful.
So if I understand rightly from what you said, semantic knowledge graph is just a formal way to tell the machines how different pieces of data, different sources of information, if you like, connect up and how they relate to one another.
So it's looking at those relationships between the data, so you can codify the relationships.
Yeah.
Then what that does, that can then reference a load of other data which might sit in another database somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's looking at the semantic, so the context of it.
Yeah. So it's understanding what the words mean.
Yeah. So that's what Google does as well, right? So if you Google something, it tends to know what the context is because it's clever. So that's looking at the semantic context of when you're asking it. So that gets down to things like embeddings in large language models.
So this is taking us towards data analytics. So how do we interpret that term?
So data analytics for me, there's two sides to this coin, right? The first side is you've got to pull the data out. So if you don't understand the problem you're trying to solve, you won't pull the right data out. So when you're pulling the data out, is that ripping it out of an email? Is that ripping it out of a corporate system through an API or something like that? So where are you going to get the data from? So once you get the data, you then need to put it through a pipeline to validate that data. So back in the old days, that might have been a macro in Excel that says it's the wrong date format, right? The American date format, not the UK date format. So you need to go back and fix it. So we can do that through a lot of data pipelines now, which means you start to validate it.
Yeah.
So you've now got all of your data into one system, and it's now in a place where you can start to analyze it.
Yeah.
So once you analyze it, it then goes into machine learning models. It might go into Power BI. It might go into these other systems where you start to get the insights out of it. So one part of it is extracting the data. The second part of it is getting the insights from the data.
Yeah.
And when you extract the data, you got to clean it up, and that takes a huge amount of effort.
So the whole process that you've laid out, from identifying, extracting, cleaning, linking the data, and drawing conclusions from it, data analytics is the umbrella term for all of that. Is that correct?
So there's semantics around it, right? So people would argue with that definition. They'd say some of it's data science, some of it's data engineering, some of it's a data analyst job. So these are different roles. But for me, as a project professional, it's the entire gamut.
Because as project professionals, we don't aspire to be deep experts in data analytics in its pure form. We should be aspiring to learning enough to be able to use it to get our projects done.
Absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of that might be data science, some of it might be data engineering. So when we talk about data engineering, it's all the back-end workflows, right? It's looking at the databases. It's basically looking at the plumbing. So the way all this data moves from one place to the next.
Yeah. We are already seeing lots of signs now that the transformation has started, but you've been thinking about the steps we need to take in a I think, a much more clear way than many people. So could you give us an indication of what that roadmap might look like? What are the key steps that we need to be thinking about that will move us from where we were 5 years ago, when most of the project management population had never even engaged with artificial intelligence, to where we could reasonably get to in the next few years?
So for me, it's all down to the size of the organization, its ambition, its maturity, and its bandwidth to take this on. So some organizations want to do a lot, but they've got no headspace to do it. So they just chase shiny toys. They don't necessarily commit to this journey. So I think there's a few variables. So a bit like a decision tree, if you're really ambitious and you're really committed and you've got the bandwidth and you've got the people to do it, then it's one approach.
Yeah.
If it's very steady, then I'd say it's a completely different approach, right? So the first one would be understand your North Star. So what you're aiming at. You can't roadmap it out because everything's changing. You don't understand your data. Some of your data is not inside of your organization. It's in your supply chain, etc. So if you try and plan all that out, you'll be spending years and years and years trying to roadmap it and doing a baseline assessment, etc. So if you go to the APM website and you put in the Getting Started in Project Data Guide, there's some really good advice in there about how to get started.
Excellent.
So we worked that document up with the Project Data Analytics Task Force and with the APM about 4 years ago. So that's a good place to start. Just experiment. Try these things out.
So this is a pure adaptive program of change, isn't it? Where you take the first step and then you decide what the next logical step is based on what you've learned.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's spot on.
Yeah,
that's spot on. And learn as you go. And that surfaces the advocates as well.
Yeah.
So some people are really scared about this, right? I think it's going to take the jobs. I think it's really complicated. You need to be a PhD coder, etc. You don't. No. So with this code now, you just need to understand the sort of basic structure of coding and then get ChatGPT to go and write chunks of code for you.
Yeah.
And just glue it together.
Yeah.
So it's much more about, stealing these other bits of code from different sources, from GitHub and places like that. So GitHub Copilot, it's got loads of code in it. So it'll say, this is the code you need to run this specific function.
Yeah.
So it's not like the old days, 20, 30 years ago, where you got to code every single line. It's not like that anymore.
And actually, I think there's a really important point that follows from this, because my experience in my career has been that when I have seen some change coming and decided to dive in and learn about it so I'm ready for it, that has been the trigger for the transitions in my career when I've taken big steps upwards, forwards, whatever metaphor you like to use in my career, and been able to do bigger, better things and often, frankly, earn higher salaries and gain promotions. So people may be tempted to be scared of it, but I think there's a real payoff for deciding that you're going to dive in and learn this stuff.
Yeah.
You suggested that there were two paths depending on whether you're a big, complex organization with a lot of resources or a small organization, although what you described for the big complex organization sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Also for small organizations, an adaptive approach, starting off with a data inventory. How do they differ?
So I think the smaller organization, it's very difficult to get the entire spectrum of capabilities. So if you want to turn on Microsoft Azure, for instance, you've got to invest a bit of time and effort to make sure you do it safely.
Yeah. So
you just open up the floodgates to the crown jewels, and that might have all your cost plans in it, might have your salary details, it might have HR, etc. If you don't know what you're doing, then you can create a lot of damage very, very quickly.
Right.
So for the smaller organizations, I think it's a bit more dangerous, because what these tools do is they just rip data from everywhere and start to glue it all together. So it starts to increase your risk. And then if that's linked to things like cybersecurity, then you've got organizational problems, right? It's business critical.
Yeah. And data protection, I suppose, is also a concern in many countries.
Yeah. So it's more about the depth of capability for those specific areas, which is going to create business critical risk. That's where it gets scary very, very quickly. But just making sure you're safe and do the risk assessment with it, and don't be reckless. Don't be reckless.
So for the smaller organisation, the bigger organisations will need to do a risk assessment. I think what you're saying is they're more likely to have people who are capable of getting the work done straight away with less kind of start-up time.
It's the processes, they'll have the workflows, they'll have the sort of work instructions on how to do it. They've probably got all the guardrails set up. So in Microsoft as well, they'll have triggers, they'll have like sort of permissions set based around roles, etc.
Yeah. Now there's a big win to be had for this, both at organisational level, but also in the way we do projects, which is what we're interested in. I know when I've spoken to you before, you've said that this can affect every aspect of how we do projects and deliver them and plan them. But can you give us a kind of flavour of the breadth of areas of project management that the use of data and AI tools could really transform?
So let me do this top down, and I'll do it sort of orthogonal as well. I'll do it sideways.
Okay.
Right, so top down, it's going to mean that we can do the same job today, but with less people.
Yeah.
So we can automate a lot of the drudgery that we do today. And people say to me, well, artificial intelligence and these agents and things like that, it's not going to take people's jobs. Now, just look at the productivity stats. So if you've got a job where you're wrangling data and just taking data out of one system and cutting and pasting it into another system, we don't need to do that anymore. So that job is gone.
Yeah.
So that job is gone. So for the same job, we need a lot less input resource.
Yeah.
So it could be 50 to 90% less based around the job that you're doing.
Yeah.
So some of the project manager jobs, when you talk to people, you can't do that with ChatGPT, but there's a lot of things you can use these capabilities for.
Yeah. And we must remember that ChatGPT and the similar tools that are around like Gemini and Perplexity, they're not the whole of the AI tool set by any means.
No, they're not.
There's a lot of other tools out there that can do different things, but incorporate and sometimes call upon the tool sets of the ChatGPT type tools.
Yeah, so it's things like Copilot as well. There's loads of functionality in Copilot, and then that gets you into Power Automate. So it's all a spectrum again, right? You've got to see all these things as spectrums.
Yeah.
It's not this tool and that tool and whatever. You've just got to join them all together. And when you join them together, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
So there's one thing about driving up productivity, personal and company productivity. But if you're working on a £1 billion project and you do that, you're potentially going to save yourself, I don't know, 3 or 4 million. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're going to make the massive savings is not in headcount. It's in tackling delays. It's in foreseeing where these fires are going to start and then putting the fires out very, very early on. If you can do that, you'll save hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
So most people I speak to are trying to chase that 2 million, 3 million because they can measure it very, very easily. And it's easy to understand. I'm doing this job, so in the future I'm going to do this job and I'm going to need less people for it.
Yeah.
So I think we've got to be a lot more ambitious, and we've got to think big about what can we do to start to preempt where this variance is going to come from. So that's the top down. Now orthogonal. So I've written a book. So I'll give you the link to the book, which is Next Generation Risk Management. I've got another one on Next Generation PMO. It's all free, open source them. And I'm working on the third one with the great Andy Murray on Next Generation Assurance.
Okay.
So with risk management, for instance, so we talk about risk management. I've been in thousands of risk management meetings. It's the human process of guessing what's going to go wrong on a project.
Yeah.
And the most senior person in the room gets to say where that truth is.
Yeah.
So if they don't believe somebody else's opinion, then they're going to overrule it. So if somebody else's opinion does not align with their worldview and it's going to affect their project, they probably might say, no, it's not high risk. I think that's a low risk. And I'm in charge, so it's low. Now that feels a bit 1970s to me. Right?
At best, yeah.
So I did a piece of work for a big government organisation. We looked at 600 project variation notices. Right? So that's when the project needs to change and they need to go back and ask for more time, or they need to ask for more money, etc.
Yeah. So
from those 600 project variation notices, 18% of them came from risk.
Yeah.
18%. So that's 82% of those project variation notices came from lots of other reasons.
Yeah.
Right? It could be from change control. It could be because somebody was ill. It could be because of logistics problems, right? Or just dark data. It's dark data, is that somebody took a week's leave and they didn't sign this off, etc. So we're using the risk management process to manage variance, but it's only accountable for 18% of that variance.
Yeah.
Right? So if we can preempt where is that variance going to be on a project, then we can start to anticipate it and we can start to do something about it.
Yeah.
So we can't get rid of all of that variance because some of it is just emergent.
Yeah, and it's people. So someone's off sick. There's nothing you can do really.
No. So some of it you got to take on the chin, but some of it you can preempt.
Yeah.
So Dave Snowden, through his Cynefin framework, so that's CYNEFIN.
Yeah.
So what Dave has said, is put some probes out there, right? If we can probe, then we can start to get an early indicator of some of that variance. So it's not hitting us in the face really, really late. We can start to pick it up much, much earlier.
Yeah. If we understand what the warning signs are, which we can if we've got the data, then we can look at the triggering events and the underlying circumstances.
So that's a different job to the jobs we do today.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of project professionals doing that. And that's a really cool job. If you do that well, you should get, football money, because you're saving the organisation a humongous amount of money.
Yeah. And we won't be needing to run our traditional risk identification workshops, because the AI will be scraping the data and making the patterns and telling us what we need to be focused on and when we need to pay attention to it and how seriously we should take it. Are there any other? I know the reason actually I first found you was through that risk book of yours, Next Generation Risk Management. But are there other areas of project management where you can see equally transformational changes happening?
So it's things like assurance.
Mm-hmm.
For assurance, there are big armies of people who's going around and just checking what other people's doing.
Yeah.
So what they do, they go into a project, you do an assurance review. So a gateway review, people come in, they turn over loads of stones in the project.
Yeah.
An independent group of people, you pay them to come in and they go and check everything. Now, why do we need to do that? So we should be able to find out which stones to look under, because it's a risk-based assessment. So if I want to check if somebody is filling in the risk register or not, for instance, right? So are they applying the risk management process? So what I can do, I can deploy a script which is going to characterize that and give me some stats back on it. So are they following the change management process? Is their business case robust, right? So I can ingest 1,000 business cases and say, compare this business case against those other 1,000 business cases.
Yeah.
So in terms of the way it's written, the way it's crafted, critique it for me. And is that in the top sort of 10% or the bottom 10%?
Yeah.
And what needs fixing on it? So when I go in there, so you're probably still doing an assurance review, but you don't need to turn all the stones over, because the computer's already done that in advance, and it's going to say, focus on these things here.
It's giving you a list of questions to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even that, it could probably probe beforehand and say, I don't have confidence in terms of where we are on these things. Yeah. So let's now go and drill into it. And instead of being an assurance review, what you actually want is somebody who's going to go in there who's going to make it better.
Yeah.
So it's more of a coaching and advisory role. It's not a tire kicking role. So if you think about the Ministry of Defence, where I used to work, there were a load of people across the MOD whose job is to make sure that public money is well spent.
Yeah.
So it's an assurance type function. Now, it's not called assurance. No. Some of it's called project controls. There's loads and loads of titles on that job. But they're basically making sure that that money is appropriately spent and safeguarded, and there's checks and balances in place. A lot of those, probably, 80 to 90% of it, you can get done now through these sort of capabilities, right? Through artificial intelligence and advanced data analytics.
So for governments all over the world who are looking to either reduce headcount or redeploy people on more value generating or service generating roles, this is a huge benefit.
Yeah, it's huge. So it's looking at fraud. You can look at, it's something being covered up as well. So I've worked on projects, so these watermelon projects that, it's a red project, but you're reporting it as green because you've still got time to fix it. It's all going to come good, and the boss is about to move on, so they're trying to cover it up. So when the next person arrives, it's their problem, it's not your problem. There's all these human behaviours it's surfacing them.
Yeah, I mean, and that actually seems like a no-brainer. The AI tool can be instructed to make an assessment against a set of criteria of red, amber, green status. It can look at how the project has assessed it, and it can raise a flag if there's a discrepancy, because that in itself is a risk.
Yeah. So there's people out there currently. So Kelvin McGrath does it from Australia through Meeting Quality. So what they do is they say, let's sample the board, right, the project board. and let's take their consensus view about where we are, and let's look at the outliers and see what the variance is in views. And then let's compare that to some of the project engineers and the project staff. So if there's a big divergence, it probably shows that you're pushing it through hero project management. If there's synergy and they're quite similar, then it's probably in good shape.
Yeah.
So what that gives you, so what Kelvin demonstrated, it's a 6-month lead indicator of where that project's going to go pear-shaped.
Yeah.
Just through divergence of thought and divergence of opinion is that, we're being railroaded and I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
And I think those human indicators are going to be a very important part, aren't they? Because AI, if given permission, can be looking at the information that individuals submit to the project system and the way they submit it. That semantic analysis is semantic in the sense of understanding the language and the emotions it conveys can be very powerful. All of this, to me, suggests that organizationally, project professionals, project management offices, portfolio teams should be adopting this. It's a no-brainer. You'd think that people would be knocking on your door 24 hours a day to learn about this stuff and would be implementing it. But it seems to me that you're still having to spend quite a lot of your time advocating, as you are now, for the benefits. So what do you see as the barriers for adoption, and how do we need to start overcoming them? If I'm a project manager who has really started to understand this and wants to make progress in my organization, what are the problems I'm going to have, and how do I overcome them?
So, Mike, it's something I don't understand. It's a no-brainer to me. It's been a no-brainer to me for like 8 years, 9 years, something like that. So this is coming. It's not going away.
Yeah.
So some organizations who's really deploying this, and I know a few organizations who are, they're transforming the way they work.
Yeah. So
this is Betamax versus streaming. They're probably making good money today just selling videos.
Yeah.
So doing existing project controls, existing ways of working, because that's what the clients are asking for. But the clients are not necessarily asking for advanced data analytics and artificial intelligence yet because they don't know what to ask for. They don't understand it enough. So it's got to be client-driven. So that's why we've set up the Project Data Analytics Coalition with big organizations like Rolls-Royce, Ministry of Defence, so United Utilities, EDF, those sort of organizations, because they can drive the food chain, right? They can say, this is where we're going, so please come with us.
Yeah.
So I see the biggest barriers are, so first and foremost, we're all too busy putting fires out on projects.
Yeah.
I've got no headspace. We're just too busy. And we're too busy to learn. The second thing is I do project delivery, I don't do data. A lot of people say that to me. And I find that astounding. So project controls is all about data.
Exactly.
Your cost plans, your schedules is all about data anyway. It's just we tend to drive the tools with tool jockeys. We're not necessarily doing the analytics on it.
Yeah.
So if you do the analytics, it moves you up the value chain and you should get paid more for that, right? So it should be a better value job. There's the next one about the leadership, right? Do the leadership really understand this? And some of them are dinosaurs that don't want to understand it. And some of them, they've probably not got the top level support. There's no budget in place to go and do it. They think they can go and buy a tool, but it's not a tool issue, this, right? You can't just buy a silver bullet and go and fix this. You've got to get your data pipeline sorted out. There's a lot of things you need to sort out.
Yeah.
So we do free training on this in the UK. So it's funded through the government's apprenticeship levy. It's free. I've still got to employ sales teams who go out there and try and find people to get onto this course. They should be queuing up because it's free training.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to you,
why wouldn't you?
So I can train you up so you're now sort of alert to all of this scale of this opportunity. I'm spending a full day training people tomorrow. So I do module 13 on the course. I deliver it. It's a full day of training. We're trying just to open people's eyes to the scale of the opportunity.
Yeah.
But it can be like pulling teeth for some organizations, is trying to get people in through the door because they're comfortable just doing what they've always done for the last 20 years, stuck in the here and now. But for me, that's an existential threat. It's an existential threat to the profession, for those careers, and for those livelihoods. So if you're going to employ somebody, would you employ a project manager or a project manager who's got these skills, right, on a like-for-like basis?
Absolutely. I mean, this to me is the classic example of a differentiator. The difference today is that if you've got this, you're one of the few. The difference tomorrow is that if you haven't got this, then you're going to be in real trouble, because there will be no jobs for you, because you won't be able to deliver the kind of value. We'll talk at the end a little bit, I think, about how people can access that training and what there is, what you're aware of for people who are not in the UK and don't have that ability. Training is one concrete step that an individual can take. It's a concrete step an organisation can take in securing places, securing government funding for its people to be trained, or if there is no government funding where they are, frankly, it's also an existential issue for many organisations. If they don't do this, then they will be left behind by their competitors who do. But what other concrete steps should, and let's focus on the profession, the project's profession, what should we be taking aside from learning about this stuff and signing up for courses?
So I think as a profession, we've got to think, what's the ambition? Where do we want to be? Mm-hmm. So what a lot of people are doing, trying to automate the here and now. So risk management, give me better dashboards, give me better sort of workflows, etc. That's not going to move the dial. It's just going to make it, a bit more productive.
Yeah.
We've got to be bold. We've got to start to reimagine this. When I talk about risk management, we move towards variance analytics. That's a much better job. It's a really cool job.
Yeah.
So thinking about the assurance job, instead of doing the assurance, I'm going to tell you which stones to look under. So when you arrive, you can give me some really valuable contributions. That's a much better job.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's about ambition. It's about curiosity and making sure that you've got the board with you, right? Your seniors are taking on the journey with you. You need a sponsor. But if you've not got a sponsor and your boss doesn't want to do this and your organisation doesn't want to do it, then find another organisation is my advice.
Yeah.
So I spoke to a chap recently who went for an interview with the council. So they said to him, so tell me your skills about driving Excel. So after the fourth question, he just glazed over and he didn't want the job because he's been through the apprenticeship and he wants to do this cool stuff. He doesn't want to do Excel anymore. He wants to do the cool stuff.
Yeah.
So it's now becoming a sort of differentiator for your recruitment pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
You won't get the talent in anymore. Yeah. So I think it's the vision, it's the leadership, it's make sure you understand your data as well. What's your data sources? And is that now an asset for your organisation? So I'll give you an example of Crossrail. So it's a big tube that goes under London, so it connects the east of London to the west of London. So that was a £19 billion project. But that project has been delivered by an organisation called Crossrail. So it's a once-through organisation. So as soon as Crossrail is built, then Crossrail no longer exists. It just disbands. But the project is owned by the Department for Transport. But there's only a budget for delivering the railway line, right? There's no budget for taking that experience and then deploying that to the next major railway project. So all of that data that's come out of Crossrail just dissipates and goes to the four winds, right? Except for the data you need to maintain the asset, right?
Yeah.
So your drawings and all that sort of stuff. But the cost plans, the variation notices, change control, all that sort of stuff is all lost. So for an organisation, you've got to think, what is that data worth to me?
Yeah, it's a gold mine.
It's a gold mine, yeah. But we don't value it, right? We don't value it. It's an exhaust plume, so it goes in the bin because it costs money to curate it.
Yeah. I think now is the time for me to ask you for your personal vision. What is really possible if we have the technology tools, we use them properly? Can you give us a pen portrait of your vision for the future of project management?
So the challenge I've got for people is, how close to a fully automated project can we get?
Yeah.
Right? Now, personally, I don't think we'll ever get 100%, but I think we'll get 70 to 80%. So that leaves all of the sort of human interface, working with computers to ask the right questions and to challenge the data because you understand how these machines work, how the algorithms work, and joining data together, get those insights. So personally, for me, we're not going to have these existing functions that we've got today about assurance and risk, whatever. It's going to be a continuum, this joined up data model. So the project professionals, if they can get the most out of that joined up sort of data model, get the insights, and we can automate a lot of the sort of mundane processes, then we're looking at a beautiful future for a lot of people, right? It's a much more fulfilling job, and it should be a really well-paid job, because if you can anticipate all this variance, that increases delivery confidence, which increases investment confidence, which means we'll do more projects and we'll change society. Right? That's the cool thing about it.
And of course, if you look into the construction sector, there's and a lot of other sectors, there's just increasing use of robots to do work, which can be controlled with reference to global positioning. It could be that even some of the manual parts of projects like construction projects could be fundamentally controlled by the project AI. It could be just the agents, the AI agents could be uploading the specifications to the robots, which can be locating themselves with GPS and laying track for a railway or building footing.
It's all about flow. It's about optimizing that flow. So if you've got all these sensors out there, and you know what's coming in, you know what's going out, you know what the plan is, you know where it's stuck, somebody didn't turn up for work today, that is just a big algorithm. So if you can optimize that, so you've got optimum flow, how cool is that? That's what we're aiming for, but you've got to set yourself up for that. You don't just stumble over that, right? You've got to set yourself up for that with all the sensors, etc., etc. So we did a hackathon about 2 years ago with High Speed 2, which is a massive rail project in the UK. So what HS2 said to us is, there's been some extreme weather events. So there was a 40-degree day in the UK or a very windy day. What's the impact of that on a schedule, and can we start to predict it? Now, that's a really simple problem, right? So we know what the weather forecast is because there's all these MET models out there. So you can connect into those MET models and link it to your schedule, and you would say there's a part of my schedule that is sensitive to wind, right? Because it's got a crane involved. So the crane gets winded off if the wind speed gets above a certain amount. If you know that, you flag up to your team that that is now at risk, right? It's not a risk that it's going to be windy, which goes in your risk register. It's a certainty. So if you're building a project over, 2 years, it's going to be windy, right? So it's not a risk. We should not be managing it as a risk. It's a certainty. It's just, how do you manage around it? Right?
But the reality is that once this gets sophisticated, the agents will be doing dynamic scheduling based on their knowledge of what the weather's going to be and their level of certainty, because the further out you are, the more uncertainty. I think this is marvellous. And I know your time is limited. To finish up, I know you and I are talking about possibly bringing some more information to my audience, but we'll hold that in reserve while we work on the details. But can I get you to tell us a little bit about, for those people who are ready to commit and want to learn more, firstly, what is this apprenticeship course or the range of courses that you're offering, and how can people access them?
So if you're based in England, and it's only England at the moment, so it's all being devolved through the UK government. So
is England not Britain or UK?
It's not Britain even, no, because it's all been devolved to different nations. They've all got different rules, right? So we can only deliver it in England. So it's fully funded. If you work for a big organisation, if you work for a small organisation, they only pay 5% towards it.
Right.
So the course is between 12 and 18 months long, depends upon which course you go for. There's a level 3, a level 4 and a level 7 course. A level 7 is equivalent to a master's. So one is about a data technician, so starting to understand. So if you're more of a junior grade, it'll help you just to get up to speed with this new technology and really save you a lot of time and effort. It's a level 4 course. What that tends to do, it's not just about these tools, it's understanding about your data ecosystem. It's looking at data security, it's looking at GDPR and what that means for your data. It's looking at data patterns, how to rip things out of things. So if you've got a website, what can you do to rip data out the back of a website, which you can't do normally, right? So you can deploy scripts to do that. And then the level 7 course is more about artificial intelligence and then extracting the most from that. But once again, it's not just deploying these tools, it's understanding the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And for me, if you want to get really, really good at project data analytics, it's not just learning the tool sets, it's understanding the entire sort of concepts from stats as well, because stats come into this. Do you just sort of accept the answers that's coming out of it?
Yeah.
Through to data security and data modeling and data schemas, etc. Yeah. So it's about being T-shaped as well. Some people want to go really broad and they're deep in one area.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. What are you aware of for people who aren't fortunate enough in this context to be living in England?
Well, there's loads of stuff out there, right? So if you want a flavour, go to the PMI's website. They've got some courses, so most of those are free. There's the OpenAI Academy as well, so that will teach you about artificial intelligence, etc. Yeah. There is loads of stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, I think Google's got some resources as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, so each of these big platforms have got their own resources as well. So Microsoft Learn as well.
Yeah.
If you want to learn about Power BI, etc. There's a problem with some of that stuff. You're not necessarily learning about the context of project delivery data.
Yeah.
Our data is very, very different. By Amazon data, it's all nicely structured. When you put your credit card details in, it's all validated, etc. With project delivery data, we use different reference points for risk management, for instance. There's no consistent view on what a risk is.
Yeah.
So you've got a very different set of challenges than you've got for somewhere like Amazon's data. So it's more understanding the context of it and what all that means, and working with like-minded people to work through that, and then developing some solutions. So what we do through the apprenticeship as well, we develop 3 solutions, which are supported by your tutors, so we can move the profession on. And just imagine we do that with 1,000 people producing 3 solutions each. That's 3,000 solutions that will help to change the profession, which is a free byproduct of a free course. So that's what we're trying to do with Power Community.
Yeah. And one of the ways that I've been learning recently is following you on LinkedIn, because you post some really interesting stuff, and then looking at the people who actually respond intelligently and with information, and seeing what they're posting. And there's a whole ecosystem of thinkers out there. So my last question to you is, if people want to engage with you, if they want to read your free books, find out about your business, and perhaps get in touch, what are the best routes for people to contact you?
So find me on LinkedIn, just reach out to me. So send me an invite, or find me on sort of Project Success here. In terms of movers and shakers as well, just find us out, man. There's me, James Garner, people like Andy Murray, Lawrence Rowland, so Alan Mosca. There's some podcasts out there as well that you might want to listen to. There is so much out there to go at. I think the problem is being very selective about what you're trying to achieve, right? So T-shaped again, just get a broad understanding very, very quickly and think, well, this is the bit that I'm really interested in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll post some resources and put the names that you've mentioned down below. I think I have to let you go because you've got other things. So Martin, thank you very much for your time. I've learned a lot, and I hope the audience has too.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, mate. Really appreciate it.
Please do give us a thumbs up if you like this video. I'll be creating loads more great project management content, so please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of it. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.